So it occurred to me that some of you guys may not know who I am or anything about me. So I thought I might give myself a little bit of background into my my two books that I'm trying to get published. The one that I'm putting forth the most effort right now, it's called Checkmate, and I figure I would give you the rundown of the introduction to the book and a little bit about me. Before I do that, though, I just want to let you guys know that I'm recording these videos, and then I'm hitting end, and when I post them, it's cutting the end of them off, and I don't know why. So it's a work in progress. I'm not extremely technically savvy. I just doing what I'm learning on the fly, and so you guys just have to bear with me while I try to do my on the job training, because I don't know that there's anywhere you can get experience this kind of stuff besides just doing it. So I'm going to make my mistakes. I'm just human, but I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to do the best I can to honor God, and I'm going to do the best I can to provide you guys with some entertaining Christian content that will hopefully inspire you or uplift you or educate you or just, you know, as Paul says, we're supposed to spur one another on to good works, or even just spur you on to good works. So, um, you know, I've tried really hard to this path here. It's crazy. Getting published is ridiculous. It turns out writing the books was the simple part. The hard part is getting published. You to get any kind of real legitimate record or writing deal, you have to have a literary agent, and every literary agent that you send a proposal to wants different things. So you literally have to spend, I mean, at least 2 to 3 hours on each proposal, and I've sent off 24 proposals. So I put a lot of time in, and I've heard nothing back from nobody, because in today's world, they don't care if you have a good story. They don't care if you have good writing, and they don't care if you have quality content that people want, that will add to people's lives. That it all boils down to money. And I understand they have to make a profit to continue to stay in business, but it's just, I don't know. It seems like there's definitely a better way. And definitely, on top of holding a full time job, working underground in a coal mine, trying to be a dad, um, helping my dad out at his place, because, you know, and then trying to do this on the side, it's a lot. So, and they want you to have a platform. So that's why I'm doing this, because you have to be able to reach so many people with your audience. And so I have to do this, and I've reached out to, or you have to get promoted by a famous, somebody famous to say, hey, yeah, you should really sign this guy to a deal. And I've reached out to several people that are famous, and, they claim to be Christians, but I never hear anything back. And, some of these literary agents that claim to be Christian, they don't even have the courtesy to tell you that they're not going to sign you. They don't even answer you back. So it's a very frustrating ordeal and process. But I'm kind of like Kurt Signetti. I'm confident in my abilities, my God given abilities. God has signed me up for this. He has anointed my head. I've been told by several people the exact same phrase, and 4 different times I've been told, God has big plans for you. And the last time when my pastor told me that, I just knew that I'm supposed to make a dent on this world in this world, a positive dent. And I think this is how I'm supposed to do it. I've always been a really good writer, and I don't like speaking, but not to brag, I'm trying to be humble. But it seems like when I speak in these large groups, I've spoken at um, drug court graduations, at the prison where I was at. I had to speak in front of a bunch of people right before I got let out, and I gave an address to law enforcement. Um, I've just always been able to connect with people, and they could, I guess, because I've always just spoken from my heart, and you can really connect with that when a person, you can paint that picture of what they're going through when they expose themselves, and they come from a pure heart. So I guess that's my God-given ability, is that I'm honest and I speak from my heart. Um, so I'm like Kurt Signetti. He said last year, he said we're going to be 8-0, and I when I heard him say that, I was like, this, who is this dude? He's crazy. But look at him now. He's playing for the national championship because he didn't doubt himself, and that's where I'm at. I'm not doubting myself. I know my abilities. If these literary agents ain't going to sign me, well, they're messing up, because if I have to self-publish myself and promote myself and get on my sales myself and then build up my platform, and then they want to come to me, sorry guys, you had your chance. We're going to do something different. And maybe even eventually we can change the way the whole game is done to help out prospective writers, because the whole process is it's a mess. It's it's rough. So you know, but anyways, I only got like 30 minutes on this clip champ. That's what I've been using. If somebody tells me something other to use, I'm open to suggestions. I'm just trying stuff out. I know how to do this. I can kind of like clip and paste what I want to on this board, and then I can kind of scroll down through it and look at it while I'm talking. I've got my 4-year-old Gateway laptop, and I got my $67 webcam on top and I don't edit. It's always the first take that gets put up. One day in the future it's going to be different, but for right now I'm just learning. I'm just doing the best that I can, and I'm stepping out in faith, and I'm walking in what God's called me to do. So with that, let's get into this introduction to this book that I wrote. It's called Checkmate, and then there's a subtitle. It says there's always one more move with Jesus. And the reason why I named it that is because there's, in the Louvre in France, there's a famous painting by this guy, and his name is, let me try and get this right here, Frederick Moritz August Reich. It's called Checkmate. And the reason why it's called Checkmate is because Satan is playing a game of chess with a man. And in the painting, Satan, he's got the man in checkmate, and he's real confident about it. And the man, he's over here, and he's just like, he's at his wits end, because I think the message is that the game was for the man's soul, and it looks like he's lost, and he can't win. Satan's got him in check, and it's over, and he's going to lose his soul. But there's an interesting backstory to this whole painting. There was a chess master that was going through the Louvre, and he come across this painting, and some people say it was Paul Morphy, but he started studying the painting, and he come to realize that not only did Satan not have the man in checkmate, but there was some moves that the man could make that would let him to win the game. And when I heard that story, I was like, man, that sounds exactly like how the Lord come in and saved my life. And so I decided to write a book about it. You know, I got arrested November 20th in 2019, and that was the first day of the rest of my life. It's also the last day that I used drugs. Um, I've been going to Louisville um, every 3 days to buy somewhere between 3/4 to a pound of meth. It was an hour and a half drive away, and um, the reason I went so far is because the prices were so cheap that I could more than double my profit every time I come back. And I'd almost made it back when I got pulled over by the police, and they pulled me out of the car and they circled the dog around it, and they said the dog hit on it, which I vehemently opposed, and I still don't really believe to this day that he hit. I was arguing with the officers, and I said, pointing, I said, "He did not hit. He did not hit. I hope you have it on video. He did not hit. There's no way." And the officer's like, "Yeah, oh yeah, he hit." And I was like, "No, he didn't." I was like, "We're gonna contest that in court." And so they pull me out, and then they start to ask me, "Hey, can we search you?" I'm like, "No, you ain't searching me. Can we search your underwear?" I'm like, "No, I ain't searching my underwear." "Well, why not?" And I was like, "Because I don't want you to." And so we started doing this back and forth, and we were at a stalemate. And finally, they took me to the police station, and they said they were gonna get a warrant signed by the judge, and it turns out it was supposed to be like 12 ounces of meth, and it was only 6.5. But I had it in my underwear, and finally, they're like, "You need to just give it over. We already know you got it." And so finally, I just gave it to him, and it looked like life was over for me at that point. Um, I was about to be charged with my fifth and my sixth drug felonies, and it was going to be my third time overall. The first time I got convicted was with 2 felonies, and the second time was with 2 felonies. And this is going to be the third time, and they decided they wanted to charge me in federal court. So it looked like the end for me, because once I get you in federal court, you're done. You know, um, I, you know, I was kind of surprised when they pulled me in there, because the officer, the DEA officer, I knew who he was, and I didn't realize that he was DEA. When I'd been on home detention in 2005, he was the home inspection officer, and he would come and inspect my home. And then after that, he moved to the city police, and then I guess after that, he went to DEA. And when I moved, after I got my life kind of back together in order, and I moved closer to my job, and that was the city where he was working at, and we would see each other, and we'd be cordial, and even though we had respect for each other, he still had a job to do. And he also, while he was questioning me, he also let me know that they had gotten information from somebody that I had indirectly sold something to somebody who had overdosed. So not only was I looking at a conspiracy to distribute meth charge and a possession with intent to distribute, they were also going to try and get me with causing the death, which is an even bigger enhancement in federal court. So it really looked like my life was over. The first thing I did was I asked if I could call my kids, and that's the hardest phone call I ever had to make in my entire life. My son was 8, my daughter was 5, and I wasn't gonna let anybody else tell them how bad I screwed up. When I'd gotten a divorce, I took it really hard, and they were the ones that got me through. You know, I would get them 3 or 4 times a week, and on the weekends, and boy, they would make me laugh, and they really pulled me through. I don't know what I would have done without them, and so I get them on the phone and I tell them, that Dad's been arrested, and they both start crying uncontrollably, and I'm crying, and I tell them, I don't know how long I'm going to be in here. I don't know if I might. They said somebody overdosed. They said all they know is that I'm going to be doing a long time, and I don't know when I'm going to see them again, and I love them, and I'm sorry. And the officer that was helping the DEA, he was also the school resource officer, and I said, if the officer here, if anybody gives you any hard time in school, you can ask him and he'll help you. And I started crying, and I looked up, and both the officers were wiping tears away from their eyes because it really got to them, and I don't know, I'll never forget that, because I was speaking from the heart. I was so devastated that I'd let them down, and I just can't believe I would be that stupid. But you know, I was supposed to be the one that was going to protect them. I was supposed to be the guy that they looked up to. I wanted to be that ideal father. I wanted to show my son how to be the kind of man that show my son how to be a man, and how to model after my life, so that he could be a true man, be a good husband, be a good member of society. And I wanted to show my daughter what kind of man she should marry. And I was supposed to stop the generational curse that my family was under, but it looked like it wasn't going to stop with me. It looked like it was going to at least get passed down for one more generation, and it looked like my life would be over. A conspiracy to distribute meth charge carries 10 to life, and the second charge is a 5-year minimum with 45 maximum, and then they can enhance you with the overdose. So, and I was sitting there, and I was wondering, how in the world did this happen? What in the world led me down this path of certain destruction? And for us to get the whole picture, we got to go back to the beginning and work our way all the way to the present. But before I do all that, I just want to jump into a little bit of theology. Have to identify what addiction is, and we have to find how the Bible defines the condition and determines its root cause. See, when God created people, he put what theologians call the God-sized hole in our heart. Um, Solomon calls it putting the eternity into the hearts of men. When we break it down to its simplest terms, it's a feeling that's incomplete until we are right with him. It's a feeling that something's missing. It's a hole that he has placed there that only he can fill. And we're going to spend our whole lives trying to fill. And we're never going to feel complete until he completes it. And that's the way he designed it. And so everything that we try to fill it with, it's never going to fully satisfy. It's never going to fully sustain. It's always going to be a void there. And that's where addiction finds its origin. It's trying to fill that hole for the place that God has put for himself. And addiction is bondage. It's caused by demonic forces because we turn to that idol instead of God, and then it manifests in addiction, and then we are in bondage by demonic forces. And here's the crazy thing. Most people don't understand that the Jewish people of Jesus' time and before expected Jesus to be an exorcist. They expected him to have power over these demonic forces. Actually, David and Solomon demonstrated this exorcistic ability in the Bible. Well, David in the Bible, Solomon in the extra biblical text. And since the Messiah was supposed to be an heir to David, he was supposed to have the same ability. And so when Jesus comes around and he starts casting demons out, nobody was surprised. And then the crazy thing after that is Jesus gives this same power to his disciples. At Peter's confession, Jesus literally gives the apostles the power to bind and to loose in heaven and in earth. And in that, it's in Matthew 16:9. And he also gives them the keys to the kingdom. Now, when we use an article, it's out of the biblical journal, I think it's JBL, Journal of Biblical Literature, by Robert Ayers, and a podcast by my favorite Hebrew scholar, Dr. Michael Heiser. You go back and you look at the other instances in Second Temple literature and in the New Testament, and you see that every time this binding and loosing language is used, it's explicitly talking about exorcising demons. Okay, so what's that mean? What's that mean? Well, if you go back and you analyze the message that the apostles were preaching, which is the only message that Jesus gave them, and you tie that with the authority that he gives them when he sends them out, you start to understand the true power of the gospel and its power over demonic forces. And not only that, you find out in Revelation 12 that there's a war in heaven, and Michael kicks Satan out of heaven. And so what he has done is he has binded Satan in heaven. And if you keep on going, you find out that on earth, how is Satan bound? And this gives me chills just thinking about it. And this is my favorite verse in the whole Bible. It says, and they, and talking about believers, overcame the dragon by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Think about that. So Michael binds Satan in heaven. Believers bind Satan on earth with their testimony, the gospel and the testimony. And that's what's Heiser and Ayers both make the connection of sharing the gospel and the apostles being sent out in the binding and loosing talk, but they don't make the connection of the testimony of the believers. And so what I'm saying is addiction is bondage by demonic forces. Guess what has power over demonic forces? Obviously Jesus, but the sharing of the gospel and the sharing of the believer's testimony. And there's one more part. And they did not love their lives unto death, even unto death. So, on earth, in the tribulation, what Jesus did on the cross, and the believers who are willing to die to tell other people what Jesus did to change their life, is what overcomes Satan. Wow. Now, if I were Satan, what two things would I try to suppress the most? How about sharing the gospel and the believer's testimony? Now, we as Christians, we all know the Great Commission, but the believer's testimony is another underrated weapon that we have, that we must share. And so that, in a nutshell, is what this whole book is about. I have examined the power of the testimony, and I went through and I show you David and Solomon's exorcistic abilities, and then I show you how Jesus demonstrated that ability and it gave it to his disciples, and then in Revelation how the testimony binds Satan on earth. And then I go and give my own testimony, and I tell you the miraculous ways that the Lord delivered me, which I don't have time to get into, but it's a fantastic, fascinating story. I had so many miracles happen, and obviously I didn't do decades in prison like I could have, and that's because of a law that passed in 2018, is the First Step Act, and that's a miracle. And just getting me into church, the way that happened was just a miracle, and God just kept delivering me and delivering me and delivering me, and so I had to write a book about it. And so I hope that whets your whistle. I hope that whets your appetite. I hope you would like to hear some more. And it's just a little bit of intro on who I am and what I'm about. So I'll probably make another video telling a little bit about the rest of my testimony. So anyways, I hope this is helpful.